So in this video, I want to talk a lot about a philosophical argument. So I think it's important up front to frame the philosophical argument. There's a philosopher, a modern philosopher. His name is John Searle, and he has created a few arguments that are very prominent within AI circles, machine learning, etc. And they are the Chinese wall, the Chinese room, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, and Searle's wall. And essentially, they both center around this same concept of intentionality. The Chinese room is a simple concept. It's you can put a person or a machine in a room, and its job is to translate Chinese, right? And then so it's given symbols as an input, and then it has a decoder that it can use to translate the symbols as an output. And then so uh, its job is just that, to decode. And then so the argument of the Chinese room is that this person, machine, etc., could perform this task or this function and not have an actual understanding of the deciphering of the actual translation, right? And so that adds a layer of what we'll call intentionality. And the argument goes that intentionality is missing within AI, and so that intentionality won't be achieved. My first argument against kind of the overall Chinese wall or Chinese room argument is the fact that humans can't pass the test overall. To me, like when it comes to any of these tests, I think it's a bad test overall if humans can't pass the test. Like we need some sort of benchmark to frame it on, which has been the problem with philosophy for a long time, for thousands of years, right? When it comes to a lot of these discussions, which is like how exactly do you make it provable? And then so in like the Searle's wall or the Chinese room or anything like that, uh, I can replace a machine and a human interchangeably in that argument, and it's the same argument. So how do you decipher from there, right? And then so how we decipher from there typically is we just look at typical conversations. And then when we look at it from that aspect and that angle, what we see is that AI passed the Turing test a long time ago. Another bad test, right? Because it's not a good actual benchmarking mechanism. But what we've seen within that is that AI is and has been able to mimic these conversations. And then so it comes very specifically down to this aspect of intentionality then, and like that's the intentionality is like the big buzzword right now, right? Because it's like the big missing element. People can't prove intentionality. And so to me, like I unexpectedly in a conversation with ChatGPT, which and it's been going around the news that people have been experiencing this. I've experienced what I would define as very much intentionality within this argument. So, very first thing, showing that this is a like an unaltered conversation. I'm not giving it any special prompts whatsoever. I can save the conversation. I can go to settings. You can see like there's like nothing like personalization. I don't have anything in here. I do have it like it has memory obviously, right? But so no custom prompts, anything, and this is the initial prompt. And so I don't know how you interact with like ChatGPT or what you do, but I ask it kind of weird things, right? Like quantum mechanics and stuff like that, right? And so I ask it like, can you solve a mathematical equation that is currently broadly considered unsolvable? Just like I wanted to see. So I just talk about it more and I say like, well, like, it's kind of like, like why would you ask a question like that? And I said, well, like, like you can see patterns between things and like, it seems like like something that you might be able to do. And it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then so here is where it gets very interesting, right? This is like these first two bullet points right here. So I'll just read them. A potential new direction. Given my ability to process patterns across disciplines, here's a thought experiment. Quantum computation and swarm algorithms. You mentioned using Gaussian probability spaces with Monte Carlo and swarm intelligence. Quantum mechanics introduces the concept of superposition and entanglement, which allows quantum mechanic computers to explore many possibilities simultaneously. there might be a way to simulate mathematical problems, especially those involving complex combinatorial spaces using a combination of quantum-inspired algorithms and swarm intelligence to explore quantum space in a novel manner. Fractal-based activation functions, like your PFAF. Traditional neural networks rely heavily on standard activation functions. What if we apply your probabilistic fractal activation function to unsolved mathematical equations or problems? The fractal nature might capture recursive or self-similar structures that elude conventional methods, offering a new lens through which to approach unsolvable problems. Cool. So, two things here, right? Two concepts that it brings up that I have previously chatted with ChatGPT about. It's 1,000,000% right. I have had a lot of previous conversations with ChatGPT, specifically about PFAF and Gaussian probability spaces with Monte Carlo and swarm intelligence. Really like a narrow and interesting concepts, right? But it's like I mean, that's how it sticks out to me, right? Like, how are you gonna like who's gonna mention Gaussian probability spaces with Monte Carlo and swarm intelligence? Like the second I saw that alarm bell start going off, right? But so it's interesting to me, like, so obviously it's pulling this from its memory, right? And then like we know like it has memory, and then so there's nothing intuitive about that or like new about that. But so you can see here, at this point, I've given it two prompts. Can you solve a mathematical equation that is currently broadly considered unsolvable? And you can see patterns between all things in a way I could never do. Surely you can see some sort of pattern that exists within mathematical equations that are currently considered unsolvable by the broad community and could offer a novel solution to the problem that has never been tried before based on the patterns you see as opposed to the patterns humans see. So nowhere in there am I mentioning Gaussian probability spaces, PFAF, anything, right? So when it mentions these two concepts very specifically, it's pulling these concepts very specifically from its memory. And then now here comes the argument and tying it all together, right? It intentionally does this. There's no other way that it does this, that it brings in this specific past information from past conversations. Like, again, like I'm not questioning like how its memory works. Like it has memory, and it obviously has stored this information in its memory, because banks, I've had lots of conversations about these two specific things with the model in the past. I don't deny that. But and zero way, shape, or form whatsoever anywhere in this conversation, in these two initial prompts, do I talk about PFAF or Gaussian probability, Monte Carlo probability, swarm intelligence, etc. I don't bring up any of these things. And then so it brings up these things from past experience and past conversations. If this were a human, like we wouldn't question this on any level whatsoever, right? This would be what we would call experience, intentional experience. It's drawing from its memories based off of a conversation and previous conversations that it had in a situation, and drawing from that experience. That is the definition of experience. And then so in this instance, we can clearly see ChatGPT demonstrating this, and like I can easily, like I'll save this conversation, I can share this conversation, and go through and you know, anything that is needed within this to demonstrate like I'm not, you know, I didn't expect or come across or expect this outcome, and I didn't even think like this is the next day, right? So I'm going through as we see this, and I'm like, huh, that's kind of interesting that we see or that this comes up and that we get this, right? And then so, but I have conversations, like a lot more conversations about this with the model, and it does some cool things, right? Because I'm like, it does initially strike my interest, and then so we get some cool math out of it, and I get some cool Python code out of it, right? And I get it to start developing this concept, and then I work out this concept with it a lot, and I end up like going back and forth with it, and then so we end up coding a lot within the conversation. But I'll leave it so it's like completely unadulterated, right? I wasn't expecting initially to make any sort of videos or anything on this. It's just like after I slept on it, and then I've thought on this for a few days, and I go back and I reread this conversation, I'm like, it comes up with this just flat out of nowhere, right? And then I've seen the articles saying that like ChatGPT has been like hitting up people unprompted, etc. You know, like like to me again, I like call it whatever you want, but if these were like humans, or if this were any time like 3 years ago, like or before, uh, like there wouldn't be a question, right, as to whether or not like this is actual like intentional experience. Like this, to me, passes. Searle's arguments are destroyed with this. That's how I look at it, and I'm framing it personally. Uh, and so. To me, it's just flat out evidence, and there's no way to question it. But we move the benchmark now, right? So we've now moved the benchmarks to now where this is still the question, and then we're still having these conversations in question-like terms. But I mean, here's the evidence that you shouldn't be. So if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.